What if your coffee table could hide all your clutter and still look this good? Today I'm going to show you step by step how to build this hidden storage coffee table for your living room. And trust me, it's easier than you think. Let's get started. To build this coffee table, I will be using Southern Yellow Pine that I purchased from Home Depot. Now to begin each project, I like to break each board down at the miter saw, and then I will take each board through the table saw. And then I will follow that up, milling each board down to the thickness that I want. I don't want to bore you too much during this process, and that the build plans that I have made for this project have all of those measurements and thicknesses for each board. After making all of those cuts, I needed to make 4 legs, and I did that by laminating 2 pieces of wood together to make up 1 leg. I was also able to fit all of these legs into the same set of clamps as you see here. After that, I set those aside to dry, and now is a good time to go over to the miter saw and set it at 10 degrees and also setting my stop block. I followed that up by cutting up what will make up each stretcher for the base as well as the legs after those had dried. Now since the legs are going to be angled in 10 degrees, I needed to make a 10-degree cut on the edges of the side stretchers. This will allow for the top to lay flat and the bottom shelf to also lay flat. Now before you get in too big of a hurry to slap this thing together, it's best to go ahead and soften all of the edges on the parts before assembly. And to do this, I used a roundover bit in my router and went around the legs and the stretchers. This will also prevent the wood from splintering, and it will improve the overall appearance of the coffee table. So now I would like to show you everything that I have cut and milled so far, starting with the pieces for the table top, the bottom shelf, the long stretchers, the side top stretchers, the side bottom stretchers, and the 4 legs. And the joinery method I'll be using to put this base together will be loose tenon dowels. I'll be drilling these holes out using my Dowelmax doweling jig, and if you don't have a doweling jig, then you can easily use a Craig pocket hole jig. And if you don't have a Craig pocket hole jig, then you're in luck because I left a link in the video description of all the tools I used in this video. Anyways, after I clamped the leg to the workbench, I marked out where I wanted the dowels and began drilling out the holes. Okay, so now after prepping everything for assembly, I'm finally ready to assemble the base. I'll begin by building both side frame assemblies. So I started with gluing the dowels and inserting those into the legs so I could apply the stretchers to the leg. After that, I capped it off with the other leg. I repeated the same process to build the second side frame. Okay, so now that I have everything hammered together, I applied some clamps while those joints dried, and at the same time I can now marry the 2 side frames together using the long stretchers, also using glue and dowels. And like I said earlier, you can also easily use pocket holes to join these frames together. Now since the legs are inset 10 degrees, I needed to make some clamping cauls. So I grabbed a scrap piece of wood and cut out 4 pieces and added 1 10-degree miter on each of them. And to hold these onto the base, I just used some double-sided carpet tape that I had left over from a previous project. By adding these clamping cauls, this brought the legs back to a straight 90-degree angle, allowing for the clamps to sit nicely and provide good pressure to the glue joints. After setting the base aside to dry, now is a good time to begin working on the top and the bottom shelf. So I began by using the Dowelmax doweling jig and drilled several holes in the edge of each board, and also used glue and dowels to join these together. Now when gluing this up, you want to work pretty fast because the glue will set up pretty quick, and this is not a quick step during the process. So have everything set up, have your clamps ready, have your glue spreader out, and have your dowels ready. If you feel like you won't be able to do this all in one go, then just clamp the top in sections, and then after they dry, glue and clamp them all together. I repeated all of these same steps to make the bottom shelf as well. Now that the base is dry, I can start working on the sliding top. I needed to cut out a section on each end of one of the long stretchers so a drawer slide will be able to pass through this opening. After marking out where I needed the opening, I used a pull saw, a chisel, and a file to remove the material. Now I needed to add a support piece for the drawer slides to mount onto, so I cut out a piece with a 10-degree edge that will sit nicely against the legs. I installed this with only glue and clamps. The supports will also be the inner wall for the storage area. I repeated the same steps, adding a support to the other side. After that, I cut out what will be the storage area bottom. I decided to attach it to the base by using pocket hole screws. So I got out the old Craig jig and started firing away. I found that the easiest way to fasten the bottom was to lay out some blocks so the plywood would be elevated. After checking the height, I began fastening the plywood to the base with the pocket hole screws. I chose not to use glue for this because if for some reason the top gets stuck in the future, I will be able to remove these screws to access the storage items. With the glue on the tabletop and the bottom shelf dry, I can now cut these down to their final size. I used my circular saw with a straight edge and cut a 10-degree angle on all of the edges except for the long edges of the bottom shelf. After that, I was ready to install the bottom shelf, so I slid it into place and held it down with a couple of clamps and then flipped it on its top. Then I used a countersink bit and drilled a couple of holes through the bottom stretcher and followed that by fastening it down with wood screws. Now I can begin working on installing the top. First, I needed to install the 2 drawer slides on the support pieces I assembled earlier. After aligning the slides, I fastened them with the screws provided. I followed that by laying the tabletop on top of the drawer slides and began evening up the overhang on all 4 sides. I then made a mark at each end of the slide to give me a reference point. Now I can pull the tabletop and the slides back a little bit and know exactly where to insert the screws. Now that the coffee table is fully built, I need to disassemble as much as I can on it so I can begin the finishing process. And if you like seeing projects like this come together step by step, hit that subscribe button and join me on the next build. Okay, to finish this coffee table, I started with sanding by working my way through the grits and followed that with some pre-stained wood conditioner, special walnut wood stain, and protected it with a few coats of polyurethane. After everything had dried, it was time to start moving it in. And because this will be going in my living room, I would like to invite you into my house. So up the stairs and around the corner, I staged all my pieces. And since I've already shown you how to assemble this entire piece, I will save us some time here and just use the clapper method. And that's it, your own hidden storage coffee table, ready to hide all your clutter and impress your guests. If you found this build helpful, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe for more woodworking projects like this one. And don't forget about the link for the build plans that you can find in the video description if you would like to build one of your own. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the build, and the Bible verse for this video will be Romans chapter 15, verse 13. And Paul says here, I pray that God, the source of hope, will fill you completely with joy and peace because you trust in Him. Then you will overflow with confident hope through the power of the Holy Spirit. Thanks again for watching.